Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a shower jelly dupe from Lush. Now, it's not going to be a one-to-one dupe because there are several ingredients that I don't have, but this is also a good video to show you that you can use substitutions and get like the same desired effect. I haven't done this yet, so we'll see if it does come out like it should, but I am pretty confident that it is. So anyway, when I was online, I was looking at their ingredients for the shower jellies, and they are surprisingly simple. Some of them have a little bit of scientific jargon, but overall, they are simple ingredients. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but if you see, I'll give you examples in some of these ingredients here. So anyway, the thing that they all have in common are the following 7 ingredients. You've got glycerin, which acts as a humectant. It's first on the list, so it's pretty much the vehicle for the rest of the ingredients. Number 2, which normally water is the vehicle. Number 2, water or some liquid, or it can even be oil. So the water can be used to bloom the carrageenan, which comes later, or in this case, the gelatin, because I don't have carrageenan. Whether it's just water, milk, or juice, or some other liquid. Now, if oil is being used instead, water still has to be included somewhere further down the list. But if there's no oil in there, there's this. I did see one of the jellies on there that did have like a coconut oil infused with cherry or something like that as the number 2 ingredient. And then water was listed further down, and that's meant to bloom, your gelling agent. So anyway, that's ingredient number 2. Number 3 is the surfactant, which is sodium lauryl, in their case, sodium lauryl sulfate. I don't have sodium lauryl sulfate, but I do have sodium lauryl sulfoacetate, which I used to use in bath bombs. But that is, it's pretty much the same. I don't want to say it's a one-to-one ingredient, but it's pretty much the same family of ingredients. It's not going to change much. They're both anionic surfactants, and that just basically means that they're negatively charged. When you see it in shampoo and stuff, there's usually something else in there to kind of help balance that negative charge, because too much of a negative charge on your hair will make it really frizzy. So anyway, that's a little side note, but the sodium lauryl sulfate is in the shower jellies. I'll be using sodium lauryl sulfoacetate. So the next ingredient is propylene glycol. Now it's similar to glycerin. It also acts as a humectant. It's a little less sticky and seems it glides better, whatever. It is used in a lot of personal care products. Personally, I don't like to use propylene glycol because it can be toxic in certain levels. So I just tend to avoid it. Granted, since this is number 4 on the list, it probably doesn't have a ton of percentage in the final formulation, but at the same time, like, I just tend to avoid it. But I'm assuming also that this propylene glycol in conjunction with the glycerin is acting as a preservative. So, because there are no preservatives listed in their ingredients list unless they're just not listing it. But anyway, I think they're using it as a preservative because it can be used as a preservative in this case. And since it is number 4, while it's more than a preservative system, it's less than like a main ingredient. So anyway, I mean, all that talk just to say that it's probably they're probably using it for both reasons, humectant and preservative. So anyway, I don't have propylene glycol, so I will have to put a preservative in there, which I have a phenoxyethanol, which is a very common one. It's a plant-based, I think it's based on roses or something like that, preservative. So I have that. So the next ingredient on the list is the carrageenan, and this is the gelling agent, so it's what gives it its form. And it comes from seaweed. So this is another ingredient that I don't have, but I do have gelatin. And so because I'm going to be using gelatin, this is not going to be considered a vegan outcome. So that's kind of their shtick in Lush, is that this is like a vegan product, and it is, because it's not using gelatin. All the ingredients so far have been vegan. So anyway, just as a disclaimer, most people don't typically have carrageenan, but if you want to make this for yourself, you probably have gelatin. Now, I'm not talking about like Jello, like in the package, because that has a bunch of flavor and extra stuff in it. But you can get the Knox gelatin pack, and that's just straight up gelatin. I actually order it in bulk from Thrive Market, and I can link that down below as well. You probably get it on Amazon as well. So then the next ingredient, number 6, is the fragrance and essential oils. And in Lush's case, for the most part, they use essential oils, but there are sometimes some of the jellies have fragrance listed as a supplemental ingredient, just to work, I guess, in conjunction with the essential oil. So this is where the jargon comes in, because there's a lot of ingredients listed that basically just are essential oils, but they're using like the Latin words for them. So it may sound a little bit jargony, but it's really not. And then there are some words like linalool and limonene, which are in there. Those are basically components that are in essential oil. So I would say that like the bulk of the last bit, like if you go to Lush's website right now and you see like the bottom half of their ingredients list, the bulk of that is just fragrance, like chemical names. So anyway, but that's that. And also, just as a side note, like essential oils are typically very expensive, especially when you get to the ones that are like rose absolute or vanilla absolute or something like that. Those are really expensive, which can probably contribute, probably, it is contributing to the price, the final price of the product. Finally, ingredient number 7 is the color. So this is self-explanatory. You'll see, red, whatever, blue, whatever, if you see an ingredient called, I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's a it's a synthetic floral fog light or something like that. I don't know. It's basically mica, like the mica, the shimmery stuff that you see in some body care formulation. But anyway, or titanium dioxide is another ingredient that you'll see. This isn't a pacifier, so it'll make, like if you don't use titanium dioxide, you'll probably have like a more translucent product, but if you use the titanium dioxide, it'll be like a solid color. It's also a color in itself or a color modifier. So it's, titanium dioxide. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's it's the zinc oxide that people put on their nose, but it's the same concept. It's that real thick white, just very bright white color. So anyway, so that's the product or the ingredient list, and I've gone through my substitutions, and as I go through and walk through this thing, I will make commentary if I change any of that. So anyway, let's go make this. All right, so here's the recipe that I used, and I'm going to keep it up here in the corner for you to see all the breakdowns and everything. I'm basing this off of the ingredient list that's on Lush. So glycerin is listed as the number 1 ingredient. So I just took a shot in the dark and I said, okay, 60%, why not? Although I do know that glycerin is very sticky, and so I probably should have gone a lot lower than this, and you'll see what I mean in the end. Also, this is based on a 100-gram recipe because I wanted to make it as easy as possible to do these ratios. So with 100 grams, I put 60 grams of glycerin in my bowl here. And so now what I'm going to do is create my gelatin puck, I guess you could say. So I'm going to measure out 3 grams of gelatin. Now, a general rule of thumb when I'm cooking with gelatin is that usually you can get a good gel with only 3%. So honestly, I was basing this recipe off of the 3%. So I started with that as my percentage in this recipe and then worked around it. And then usually the water is the last thing to be calculated. And so what I had left over was 14%, which is probably why you see that it's kind of an odd number. So that was just whatever I had remaining at the end. So I added 14 grams of water to 3 grams of gelatin, spin it around a little bit and let it bloom. And so after that, This is where I measure out the sodium lauryl sulfoacetate, which, like I mentioned earlier, is different than what they typically have, but it is very foaming. Now, one thing to note about the sodium lauryl sulfoacetate is that it is very irritating to your lungs. Usually I wear a mask when I do this, but I didn't have one on hand. So what I'm doing is I'm just being very gentle with how I sift it in there, and I am sifting it directly into the glycerin that I measured earlier. So I did a decent job doing this because I wasn't irritated at all, and this was not very much, so it didn't take much to get that in there. And yeah, so once it's wetted though, it's not irritating. So as I spin this around in here, I'm getting it wet by the glycerin. Sodium lauryl sulfoacetate is water soluble. So with water solubility, that also means that it can be soluble in glycerin. So glycerin is, I don't want to say it's considered a water-based thing, because it's not. I mean, glycerin's its own thing. But anyway, like something that's water soluble will typically dissolve in glycerin unless it's like a special chemical. So anyway, that's what I'm doing here. And you'll see that there's chunks in there, but I'll work those out here in a bit. I just didn't want to spend too much time on it. So instead of the propylene glycol, I added Cocamidopropyl Betaine. So the difference is the Cocamidopropyl Betaine is a amphoteric sulfo. I know these are a lot of weird scientific words that I'm throwing at you, but it's an amphoteric surfactant, which means that it can adjust based on it can adjust its charge based on the pH of the material. Now, I didn't test the pH of this, so I honestly couldn't tell you, but I believe, and I will correct myself if I'm wrong in the comment, or not in the comments, but in the description below, but I believe that at a more acidic pH, it is more of a negative charge. So it balances nicely with the sodium lauryl sulfoacetate as a surfactant system. Anyway, so I'm mixing my glycerin puck in here. So what you didn't see on camera was that I was heating this solution. So I was heating everything up so I could break up the chunks and so I could get it nice and warm for my gelatin puck. So the gelatin works a lot better when it's warm. Granted, it will eventually dissolve even if it's cool, but you know, just for time's sake, I heated up my solution so I could get it in there. Now you'll see too that there's still some chunks of the gelatin in there. I keep wanting to say glycerin. There's still some chunks of the gelatin in there. So off camera, again, I heated it up a little bit. So now what we have here is a smooth solution. So once I have my smooth solution, I am adding a fragrance called Goldie Dreadlocks, which is an interesting name for the fragrance. It's like a fruity and it's got a little bit of touch of patchouli in it. I'm not a patchouli fan, but this actually smells pretty good. So I was happy with this. It's a nice, fresh, like shower fragrance. So it would be perfect for this application here. But I could already tell that this is very sticky, and I probably should have adjusted my ratios of glycerin to water, because when things are listed in ingredient concentration order, they don't tell you the percentages. So there was a very big chance that maybe the glycerin was like, you know, maybe 50% or so, or no, not even 50, like maybe 40%. And then the water was a higher percent than 14. So anyway, I will try this again. But I decided to try a different experiment here. So as I was doing this, I was like, you know, I wonder if I can just put shampoo in the gelatin. So I am taking this shampoo that I really like from Mizani. It's a moisture fusion. It's got activated charcoal in it, and it's supposed to be good for, you know, clarifying your hair. So I'm measuring this out outside of the water and the gelatin. So I subtracted 17% from 100, and whatever I have remaining is how much shampoo I'm measuring out, which ends up being, 83 grams. If I did that math right. I don't know. I can't math on the fly. But anyway, so I'm measuring out 83 grams of this shampoo, and then I'm going to heat it up like I did with my other solution, just to get it nice and fluid. But you can see at the top there, I've already mixed up my gelatin. I'm getting it blooming, and it should be ready here in just a second. So now that my shampoo is nice and warm, I'm adding my little gelatin puck to it. I'm going to chop it up just like I did with the other stuff. And this is very, very simple, and you could do this at home. Gelatin is a very easy ingredient to acquire, and obviously shampoo is very easy to acquire. Now this shampoo is not the cheapest, so you can actually use a cheap thing on the store, like a Suave or something like that, if you are so inclined to try this yourself. I just sprayed the top with a little bit of alcohol just to get rid of the bubbles. That's all I did there. And because I was really mixing this pretty vigorously and created a lot of bubbles. So I didn't need my owl mold, so I had enough room in this little flower mold to pour everything in. And I gave it another spritz of alcohol to get rid of more of the bubbles. And we're going to call it a day. So I waited a day, and I am testing these out in my water. I should have, in retrospect, gotten 2 jugs of water, but they do both foam pretty well. So this one here is the shampoo, and it smells really good. I didn't have to use color or fragrance because it was already in the shampoo, but you can see that it foams really well, and it just kind of jiggles a lot. I did break it because I was being a little rough with it, but yeah. So anyway, this is my handmade from scratch one, which also foams really well, but you can see that it's basically a blob. That is my owl mold version of it that I pulled out of the mold, and it just stuck. The other one actually did a really good job releasing from the mold. This one here, though, just is like just a little blob there, and you can see it's very pliable, and glycerin is a humectant, so it just pulls moisture from the air, and it's just, yeah, it's very sticky. Well, not sticky, it's just very mushy. But here's the final like close-up of everything. This is after about a week. They've just been sitting around. They got really dry, which in Lush's on their website, they actually keep these in jars to keep them from drying out in the air. And I did not do that. So these were just sitting on my soaping counter, and they were drying out. But they're still fine. The glycerin one is still actually pretty sticky even after sitting out on the counter for a week. So I'm going to give this another shot with like a lower concentration of glycerin, a little higher concentration of water. I may or may not film it. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but you can see here in this experiment that you can just do it with regular shampoo or body wash. So if you like the novelty of having like a shower jelly, you can just get yourself some Knox gelatin and mix it at a 3% ratio with shampoo or body wash. That's all it takes. So especially, you know, not to knock Lush because they have some great products, but if you cannot afford that, but you do like the novelty and you want to try something creative, here you go. I hope this was helpful to you, and I would be interested if you try this. I'm going to probably experiment a little bit more with more stuff, and we'll see how that goes. I also wanted to give a little shout out to my other channel, which is a completely different channel than this one. It is actually, I created it to make some ambient sounds for myself when I'm writing or whatever. But if you find some joy in listening to ambient sounds for creativity or whatever you'd like to do, please check out Retro Outer World here on YouTube. I'm actually also on Spotify, but I only have a few things listed on there right now. In fact, the songs that I have on Spotify, a couple of them are actually based on my book, which you should also check out, the Reaper's Gamble series. And I'll link all that stuff in the description below. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. Come check me out at ariholdingauthor.com. Sign up for my newsletter, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.